Everybody, is just a little bit of Zoom etiquette. As you'll see on the screen, we're more than happy to answer the questions at the end. So we're going to be leaving time to do that. And if at any point you discover that somebody else has asked the same question and you want to retract your question, then equally let us know that in the chat at the same time. Please keep your video switched off and your microphone muted. Just so that helps us make sure that the right speaker is visible at the time. It cuts down on background noise for us and the other participants, and it also means that when we're playing any videos, there's less chance of lag going on with those as well. So our objective for today is to give you a greater understanding of the judging categories and how there's a degree of overlap between those categories, which means that hopefully you will get a greater understanding of what elements make up a C performance, a B performance, and ultimately an A score in each category in the world of barbershop. We'll be taking you through those things. So my name obviously is Mike Warner. I'm chairing today's session and I am a performance judge as well, but representing the categories today, we have Ed Cox on music, we have Helen Warner on performance, and we have Rhiannon Owens Hall on singing. So they will be giving the feedback on each of the performances. They're going to give you a very brief introduction as to what their category is specializing in, the elements that they're going to be looking for within a performance. And in order to kind of help work our way through this, we're going to watch and listen to 3 performances at different levels. But what we're going to do for that is we've chosen to use the same song as the vehicle so that you've got an element of continuity between each performance. We won't have time to play all of the song, but we've got a snippet of them which shows some of the things that we're going to hopefully demonstrate, and hopefully you will be able to see as well. So that will hopefully give you a greater understanding of what the category is looking for. Just to kind of guide you in that direction, on the screen at the moment is the top of the judging forms for each of the scoring categories. So you can have a look at the terminology there. If you want to look into this deeper afterwards, you will find that off the BABS site. And our email addresses are also at the end of the presentation if you want a chance to ask any more detailed questions after that time. But armed with that information, hopefully you will find our category are all going to talk about these different elements that you can see relative to the performances we're going to be looking at this afternoon. So first up, I'm going to hand it over to Ed, and he will start to tell you a little bit about what the music category is looking for. Over to you, Ed.
Thank you very much, Mike. So the music category is evaluating the song and arrangement as performed. We don't actually give a score for the arrangement per se. We're giving a score to how you, as the performer, bring that arrangement to life. And we've got 5 different categories that we look at here. So first of all, we look at consonants. I think this is often referred to as lock and ring. Is that, the overtones, the expanded sound. It will have a lot of overlap with the singing category. We also look at theme. What is the primary theme of the song that you're singing? Sometimes there's a couple of themes, but the main themes will be either lyrical or harmonic, melodic, rhythmic, or comedic. But whatever the theme is, do you bring the theme to life and do you show a good understanding of that theme? We've also got embellishments. Now, embellishments are things that the arranger has put in there to enhance the vehicle. So we've got swipes, echoes, bell chords. The tag is a form of embellishment. They're things that maintain interest, that create forward momentum, or maybe add to the emotional impact of the song. So do you have a good amount of embellishments, and are they well delivered? Execution is basically really how well rehearsed you are, how nicely synchronized is it, how much of a unit you are together. And then delivery, which has a lot of overlap with the performance category, which is really about believability and the impact it has on the audience and how effectively you bring the musical ideas that you have to life. And given it's got a great overlap with performance, I think this is the perfect time to hand over to Helen.
Thank you very much, Ed. So the performance category is looking at the entertainment within the barbershop style that you give us. And those 5 things that you saw on the top of our score sheet are here. When we say we're considering entertainment, that's the impact on the audience, basically. Do you make us laugh in comedy sets? Do you move us in emotional sets? Do we remember your performance? Does it stay with us? Do you have an impact on the audience? And then we look at things like audience rapport. Is the audience on your side? And that's not to say that obviously a barbershop audience at a competition is always going to be on the performer's side. You all want them to do well, but are we on your side in the story that you're giving us, in the character that you're portraying? Do we believe you? Are you generous to your audience? Are you vulnerable and let us in on stage? Expressiveness kind of speaks for itself. It's expression vocally and visually though. So I think that a lot of the time people are kind of under the impression that the performance category is the visual category. And although that is an element of what we look at, we do also look at vocals as well. And that fourth point there, visual vocal agreement, kind of brings that together. Are you, that this kind of area is going to flag up if you're singing a really lovely, happy love song and you're looking very concerned on stage. That's the kind of thing we want to look out for and avoid. Or if you've got this beautiful, lovely legato singing and some crazy choppy, like impactful choreography movements that are against what you're singing. So we want to make sure that our vocals and our visuals agree in the shaping of the music. And then believability, of course, are you being genuine? Do we believe you? Are you buying into the story so that we can buy into it with you? And what we don't want are, distracting hand gestures that you wouldn't use in natural speech, or unnatural kind of speech when you're doing conversational singing rather than perfect note values in an up tempo or something. If you're doing a ballad, is it very naturally performed? And then I'm going to hand over to Rhiannon, who's going to tell you about singing.
Thank you, Helen. So in the singing category, we are evaluating, no, we're not. In the singing category, we are evaluating the degree to which the performer achieves artistic singing in the barbershop style. So we're looking at the components or the elements that make all of these things up. So we start off with the intonation. Is it just intonation? Is it in tune? Is it melodically in tune? Is it harmonically in tune? Are we staying to the tonal center of the note? And the tonal center will be the pitch that's blown in the beginning. So are we still in tune with that pitch note that we started? The next element is called vocal quality, and we're looking for, is the sound well supported? Is it free or is it tight? Is there resonance in the sound? Is there a ring? Are there any things that distract you? The vibrato, if there is a vibrato there, does it enhance the performance? What about a tremolo? Is there one of those, which is that the tremolo is the faster, very much faster vibrato? Is the sound bright or strident or nasal? Is it swallowed, dark? Those sort of things. Is it oversung? And also, is the quality, are you allowed to sing with the quality that is appropriate for you at your level of performance at that given time in the contest? And that's quite important, because I'm going to talk a bit about that later on. Then we have unity, which is, about the voices. Are there matched sounds? Does the timbre match? Are the word sounds matched? What are the single voices like? Are the voices balanced? How about when they start the sound, the onset of the sound, or when they release the sound? Is it synchronized? Does it flow? What about the pronunciation or the articulation of the sound? That's really important. And then we get to the characteristic sound of a barbershop sound, which has an expansion in it. So how much expansion is it in it? Is it consistent? And what ring does the ensemble, whether it's chorus or quartet, does it have that ring that's consistent right the way through? And then we come to the section which is called vocal expression. It used to be called artistry. It's now called vocal expression. And it talks about enunciation and how you say the word sounds so that they're meaningful, so that actually you sound as if you're trying to express the song and living the song, and they've got to be believable. The tone quality, representing those sort of things, works for the enunciation and the inflection of the sound, and that there's an emotional involvement. Even if it's an up-tempo song, are you still emotionally involved without losing your vocal expression, without losing your vocal quality? That's the singing category. Thank you. And
thank you very much, Rhiannon. Perfect. And so hopefully you've kind of got a nutshell already about what each category is looking for. And you'll already have heard some words kind of repeated between the different categories. There is this intense overlap in what we do, and yet we look at the performance with a slightly different angle, but we kind of meet a lot of these situations together. Anyway, we're now at that point where we're going to start to look at three performances. And first up front, I would like to thank the choruses this afternoon involved in our education slot here for letting us use their videos. We are, let's say, going to work through the same song, but from 3 different performances. So here goes the first one now with the Essex Chordman.
Once in a lifetime, maybe, a man knows a love like this. Once in a heartbeat, maybe, the stars glow bright. The world is right. Time cannot dim the memories, your laughter, your eyes, your kiss. Oh, how I love those memories, they're always new. They give me you.
Excellent. So Rhiannon, if you want to take us away with the singing content.
Thank you, Mike. So this for me was a very sincerely delivered performance. The gentlemen are very involved with the song, and there was some meaningful vocal expressive devices that they used, some nuances that they tried to put in there. And in some places there were some flowing sounds. So they've got the basis, particularly the last chord actually, they took great care with the you, ooh, ooh bit. It was very carefully sung, and it was in tune. Each chord was in tune. It was very pleasant to listen to. So what we're looking to here is to try and give them something to focus on, to move them on, to improve the next score should they want to go into competition again. So there's a few things to identify. The intonation, they had a pitch and they started straight away, but actually the pitch started going lower and lower and they lost pitch. Now, it's important to realise that once we hear that happening, we don't keep marking it. We say, right, that's one of the issues. Let's forget that. Let's move on to something else, which is really important for them to get some more feedback, so what they can do. If we're looking at vocal quality, it's a rather heavy sound. It needs to be slightly lighter so that they get a warmer quality to the voice. And only occasionally did I hear some resonant match there between the parts. So if I look at what I'm looking here, there were occasional intonation problems. The vocal quality can be improved, okay, with some basic skill work. And if I think about word sounds match, that's the tiny little sounds within the words or at the onset of the sounds. There were some mismatches there as well. And the balancing of the chords will have affected the sound and also affect the expansion quality. I'm sure you all heard a couple of individual voices. So there were minor distractions, individual voices, some synchronization issues. But so one of the things to consider is, did they have complete control of the song? That would be one question you would like to ask yourself. What do they need to do to a little bit more? If I'm looking at the gentleman, and you would look at them as a singing judge to see if there's anything you can help them to do with the posture, and they look a little bit stiff. If you look at the frozen picture that you've got in front of you, you can see that the hands are a little bit frozen, and that in itself produces tension in the body where we're trying to get support, which is right the way through. So there are lots of tiny little things that they could work on. And so in my score for this chorus at the time was 53. So it's very firmly in the C category, but so we're looking for consistency and reliability in delivery. Thank you. And now over to the next person.
Which is me. Great. So so to pick up on something Ree said there, she said it's C categories. So we have categories in Barbershop. We talk about a D score being between 1 and 40. Then you've got 41 to 60 is your C category, 61 to 80 is your B category, and then 81 up to 100 is your A category. So here we're at the high end of C category. I myself have music around a 56. And I think it's right in this case that music is a little bit higher than singing. You will find that you know, that's the reason we have 3 categories. We are allowed to disagree a little bit, but they will all often be in the same sort of ballpark. And one of the reasons for that is actually at this level, singing is so fundamental to performance and to music as well. We picked up on a lot of the issues that I would pick up on as a music judge. I mean, actually, if we look at their synchronization is actually not bad at all. And a really nice, clean start. But the problem really here is tuning, it's tonal center. And from the beginning, we can hear that tonal center dropping. And because the tuning is a little bit missing in places, it means that they're lacking the ability for good lock and ring for the consonants, because the chords aren't tuning and therefore aren't locking in the way that we'd like. What's in some ways frustrating, I suppose, is that you can hear this chorus clearly have good musical intentions. They've got a plan. And actually, it sounds like they want to do the same thing, which is always part of the battle, you know, that you want to make sure that your chorus members all want to sell the same message. But tuning issues, blending between the parts is kind of getting in the way of that. One thing that we have at the bottom of our sheet, and I believe actually it might be with all categories, is suitability to performer. And we say, actually, is this the right arrangement for you to be singing? Now, that doesn't mean to say that you can't sing any arrangement, but actually you need to be looking at what's going to make you sell yourself the best you can. This is not an easy song. It's quite a challenging song. So a chorus like this, I might be saying to them, look, if you're struggling with it, maybe look at a different arrangement that maybe is less challenging, but therefore, because it's less challenging, you can have more confidence in it, you can play with it more, and you can then try and put in more embellishments and things, because you're not constantly trying to fight with maintaining pitch, with maintaining momentum, whatever it might be. I would say a slight counter to that, that the most important thing to any performer is you should sing something that you enjoy. So if they were to turn around to me and say, we want to sing it because actually it means a lot to us and we can perform it better because we can get into the message of the song, then that's great. But I would say just consider whether actually it might be a little bit challenging for them at the moment. I would like to say, though, isn't it great that even though they were losing tuning, actually the sensitivity didn't go, and I still feel that they were in the message of the song despite their tuning issues. So that's what I've got to say. I'm going to pass over to Helen now for performance.
Thanks, Ed. So the reason that we do it in this order and we put performance last at this kind of category, a high C level, is because actually a lot of the things I would like to pick up on are things that have already been said by singing and music. And at this particular point in time, we're thinking about how different elements are going to be distracting us or preventing us from being able to get into the story and really buy into the emotion. So I would be scoring them around about 56, 57, so a very similar level to Ed. They've got some really lovely conversational phrasing going on. They don't sort of hold out words that aren't naturally held out or anything like that. They do have some lovely vocal expression, which Ree picked up on, some moments like laughter or holding out the on dim for dimness. And some of their faces visually are really buying into this, what is essentially a love song. And you can, I mean, even in this freeze frame, you can see that gentleman on the right of the front row. He's got a lovely, gentle smile going on there. And you can tell that he's really buying into singing this to someone he loves very much. So they've got a lovely musicality, some really lovely, suitable dynamic choices. But then the kind of muddying of the sound, the clarity of the sound, and the individual voices popping out are something that we would flag because it's distracting us from the unity of them selling their story and their song. I would say that from a performance judge's perspective, the biggest issue here is probably an energy thing, because I also picked up on the pitch dropping and a few times on kind of, it's maybe a breath control thing, which again is something that I think the singing judges and a singing coach would be quite good at helping them with. But they're kind of dropping ends of phrases, and their tuning is generally better at the beginning of a phrase than the end. And so I think they need to work a little bit on their energy and having enough breath to get through all of that. Or as Ed says, maybe finding a song where they don't have to struggle so much with that kind of element so that they can really bring out all these lovely musical choices that they're making. So that's the end of the feedback for song there. I just think it's worth flagging at this point that you have already noticed that there is quite a bit of overlap between the categories, of course. And if you are a stats nerd and you already have all their original scores with you, it's worth flagging that we might not be exactly what they had on the day, because of course judging snippets of videos is very different from being live in the room at the time. So we may flag things that later on in the song they actually did very well, that kind of thing. So just keep that in mind as well as we move through the performances.
Thank you very much, Helen. Excellent. Okay, so I should have said this just before, but if while you are watching these performances with us, you have got a pen and paper, then by all means be writing down the things that you see in these performances as you are observing them, the positive elements that you're seeing in there, as well as perhaps the elements that you'd be saying you know, I think that they could do a little bit better in this area if they worked on this. We may have some budding judges out there, and we wouldn't want to discourage anybody who has that in their system that they want to get involved in judging. You know where we are. Okay, we're going to move on now to contestant number 2, which is Harmony Links. Take it away.
I'll be seeing you in all the old familiar places that this heart of mine embraces all day through, all day through. In that small cafe, the park across the way, the children's carousel, the chestnut tree, the wishing well. Oh, I'll be seeing you in every lovely summer's day, in everything that's light and gay. I'll always think of you that way.
Okay, so it's over to me to start this one for music. So this one for myself, I've got sort of 63, which is sort of low level of the B category. And the reason that this one is perhaps a little bit higher than the last one is really more consistency. So it'd be things like the diction is a little bit better, the tuning is a bit better, more understanding of the words and emphasis is on the words in the right place, and actually light and shade. So one of the things that we want to see is a journey through the song. We don't want just everything on one level. We want to have the moments where it kind of swells a bit to show some emotion. Now, there is some, but we're talking about low level B here, and what we'd be looking at with a chorus like this is then to work on that and kind of have a lot more light and shade and a lot more of a story going through. One of the things that I'd like to put on about that is we have what I call a shopping list in this song. So we talk about different places that remind them of their lost love. So the cafe, the park, the carousel, the chestnut tree, the wishing well. But they are delivered like, oh, that's item 1, that's item 2, that's item 3. And actually what we want is some emotion, some story behind it so that we can buy into it. And it does feel a bit like painting by numbers. It's like, well, the arrangement tells us to sing this, so we sing these words, and then we sing these words. And our directors told us to come up here, so we'll come up here. But there needs to be a bit more understanding behind why we do those things. Particularly the wishing well. This is a common trap, actually, people fall into in this song. The arrangement naturally slows down to this point, this contemplative point about the wishing well. And yet often that's exactly what happens. It just slows down and kind of loses propulsion. And what we want is, we want a bit of slowness to reflect, but we don't want to then lose the push into the next part of the song. And also, I feel like, you know, one of the things that we judge as music is embellishments. And the embellishments they have here, you know, they do actually deliver fairly well, but it just feels a bit staid. It feels like it needs a bit more, something more to bring it to a bit more to life. And ultimately, you know, this is heartbreak. The point of the song is to feel the poignancy of that heartbreak, and so we want them to really bring that through to us. I think it's Helen next, is it?
It is indeed, it's me. So I would be scoring them around a 64-ish, which is kind of on the lower B end, but heading into mid there. There's some lovely expressiveness going on, which, if you remember, is one of those 4 big bullet points that performance judges have at the top of their sheet. Some really lovely musicality in their shaping of the piece and the dynamic choices, and they're never too loud. It's a lovely sensitive song with a really lovely sentiment, and there's never any over singing going on or anything like that. So it's really sensitive to the emotion and the love song that we're being given. A lot of their faces are very switched on, and you saw, of course, that moment where they were looking at the old cafe and so on, and the whole chorus looked in that direction and then looked in the other one together. So they had an actual visual planned thing in there as well, which everyone was engaged with at that. You know, all of them did the look together and looked kind of wistful in that direction. So, and what I would say about that is that when they haven't got a planned move, this planned look together, then some of the faces are dropping out. And what we want is for you to be switched on and engaged the whole time, not just when someone has told you to do something to create a performance effect, but the whole time you need to be really involved with the emotion of the song. Also on the performance judges sheets, we have a couple of points of unity as well. So there are individual voices popping out and things. That's something that distracts us. It's not something that, you know, we won't keep pointing out every moment that an individual voice pops out, as Ree said in the first performance, which is quite important. We've ticked that off the list. It's on the score sheet and now we move on. That's just flagged once. And the bit that we just finished on, they had that phrase towards the end of, in every day that's light and gay, I'll always think of you that way, which felt very rushed. They just kind of wanted to get those words out the way almost. And I imagine that the conscious choice behind that was to create a bit of contrast with the slower moment around the wishing well and the park across the way and so on. But actually it was so rushed that there were lots of messy sync issues and things. And it just kind of felt like you didn't really think about what those words meant. You just wanted to get them out of the way. So take a little bit of time with that phrasing as well. We want things to be natural and not to distract us or take us out of the moment. So those are the kind of primary things that I would pick up in that performance there. Rhiannon.
Thank you, Helen. So we're starting this performance, and when we come into this, they have got a really rich vocal quality, which I thought was very impressive. It was warm, it was totally in character with the song that they were singing. The vocal times was really good, and it was a very sincerely expressed delivery, particularly in the beginning. Yes, they did have little nuances, the cafe, the gate, the wishing well, all of that sort of thing. And each one of those had a slightly different vocal quality, which was very pleasing to hear. Okay, so all of those things, everything was really clear, but then we got into and it became a little bit rushed, a little bit not necessarily unsynchronized, but it wasn't consistent in the delivery. There was a feeling of rushing towards it, and it wasn't consistently reliable. It didn't feel comfortable. It felt as if it was just a little bit wobbly at different times, but it was a very, overall there was consistency there. But again, I have it in the lower B category, which is, I had it at 65 because the vocal quality was very pleasing. Things to think about. There were occasional moments when the balance between the voices was out, okay, and the resonance wasn't matched. It did affect how you heard it, and so there was an inconsistency in the expanded sound. There were also, as you're getting to the back end, always think of you that way, there were actual sync issues between both sides of the chorus. Now, it could have been because we were in competition situation and there was a little bit more nervousness and they weren't necessarily together, but it actually has an implication that there was some indecision, as Helen was saying, there's some indecision or insecurities about that with the plan, and it wasn't naturally fully embedded with them. So they were working it rather than living it, which is the difference in the thing. There's great things that they can work on. But as I say, it's a 65, there were distractions, and every time when we're talking about the differences between a C and a B category, we're looking about consistency and reliability that becomes consistent. You feel comfortable, they're absolutely at home in what they're doing. So I hope that's been of some help. Okay, over to you, Helen.
Thank you very much, Ree. So we've gone through the 3 categories there with performer number 2. Our third and final performance this afternoon was probably quite providential that we should choose this one, seeing as many of us will have memories this last week of a British barbershop icon that unfortunately left our world and is entertaining singers up in heaven, I'm sure. Mr. John Grant with Grand Central. Here we go.
I'll be looking at the moon, but I'll be seeing you, only you. I'll find you in the morning sun, and when the night is new.
Okay, so jumping in for performance here first, the number I would put on it is probably somewhere around a 78, which is just right at the top of the B level there. They have this lovely warm sound that's really suitable to this song. It's really nice. You can't, I mean, especially when the leads have that pickup, you cannot pick out individual voices in that at all. So there's a really great unity there. Every one of their phrases is energized and every one of their breaths is energized. So there's never a sing a phrase, stop, white space going on. There's forward momentum the whole time because they keep all of that energized all the way through. Every single face, and I realize the video quality is not the greatest for this one, so apologize for that, but every single face from what we can tell is very involved and very engaged. And the phrasing and the dynamics take us on a beautiful journey that really honors the arrangement as well. The arrangement is built in a certain way and their performance is built in just a beautifully complementing way to that. So now that we're knocking at the top end of B and looking at A score elements that are going on, it's time where we can get quite picky, the main thing being inconsistency. So there, you will have noticed that there were a couple of voices, maybe one or two voices that did pop out just in one or two moments, particularly noticeable when they did the loud morning sun. You could hear someone in the leads in particular popping out there. So we can get quite picky about very specific words and phrases and chords at this point. And it felt like it was over singing, which Ree will probably pick up on as well, but it was very kind of muscle tony up there. And it's maybe less natural and came on quite suddenly. So it's a bit of a surprise for the audience and maybe would take us out of the moment for a second. There are a couple of diction issue moments and we really want to hear the lyric of the song. It's very beautiful, so make sure we don't lose any of the words in that. And I think I would experiment with the chorus if given the chance, just taking a little bit more space on the risers. They're very bunched up. This could very well be a symptom of the fact that they have one less riser on each end at their rehearsal space, and you obviously don't want to go on a competition stage and change what you're used to, but they have got extra riser space there on the stage to use if they wanted to. They're very bunched up, and I think it would be really nice, especially when we get to this peak of the song just before the tag, if they had a little bit more physical space so they can really own their performance space, each and every member. I think it would be really interesting to try and experiment with that a bit with them, to give themselves the physical room to just get into the physicality and the energy, and physically as well as vocally and emotionally, that they were obviously giving us vocally. So those are the main things for performance. I will hand over to Ree.
Thank you, Helen. Same for me, a rich sound starting with very good unity. There were some lovely, lovely moments with really beautiful singing. Okay, the vocal expression was consistently present right the way through, and they made some really good vocal nuances and choices. Some of the things that they did were really, really clever because they hit a chord and then they do a diminuendo, that the sound goes quieter and quieter, and it was beautifully controlled. And that's quite a hard vocal skill to do. So it was on the word go, and so it gave you the feeling of it disappearing, and it was disappearing away, which was beautiful. It was really very nicely done. It was consistent, but because of those things that Helen identified, the sound popped in and out very, very occasionally. So we didn't have complete mastery, and that's why we're very near the top of the B/A category. And it's the difference between consistency and absolute mastery of the skill. So let's look at some of the things, the minor distractions. Occasionally, and again, Helen identified the same place, the sound was slightly pressed, where everyone was very, very emotionally charged and charging into the song and totally believed it, but they muscled the sound a little bit. There was a little bit of, it would have been called constriction, but it was the second time they sang I'll Find You in the Morning Sun, not the first time, the second time, that big climax point there. And they did, and when they came out of it as well, to try and get it consistent after that, the sound dipped in and out, which affected the vocal quality towards the back end. So with the singing category, it's a level of perception of vocal expression at a high level. are they able to sustain artistry right the way through? If they could, and without me seeing a plan or anything like that, then it would be in the A category. But to me, it's not just there just yet. And it's also an important thing to say that this is a 2012 recording. So things, you know, we're 9 years down the line. So those vocal skills would have been enhanced with all the education that we've been receiving from so many wonderful educators. Thank you. Over to you, Ed.
Thank you very much. Well, so I'm in a similar ballpark. My score for this is 79. So just touching on the border of A, but not quite getting there. So we celebrate all the great things here, is like Helen and Rhea have picked up, you know, the clean sound, beautiful sensitivity to the lyric. And as a united purpose, you know, that you can feel that the whole chorus is trying to deliver the same musical message here. I think there's a nice light and shade. I talked about in Harmony Links about how, you know, you need to have degrees of light and shade, and you definitely get that a lot more here. That's not to say it's perfect, and this is the reason, you know, you've got 22 more marks to play with. If you're at 78, why is it not 100? So both Rhea and Helen have mentioned that there's the Find You in the Morning Sun. It is almost over singing. There's a huge passion. You really feel the passion rising there, but the chorus have perhaps let the passion slightly get in the way, and it's meant that voices are popping out and tuning is slightly going off, and we therefore as judges are distracted by that, and the audience would be as well. It takes you out of the message a little bit, but then they brought it nicely back down. And when you're doing light and shade, you don't want to just drop straight to 0 and then up to 10. You want to bring it down and up in stages, and they did the gradation really nicely. There's a couple of weird phrasings. I mean, there's towards the end, there was, I'll be looking at the moon. And you think, why do you hold the word the? It's a very unimportant word. And I'm assuming actually it was for harmonic reasons. There's probably the chords at the time worked really well, but therefore you need to sell that in the way you sing it. You need to maybe not put so much push onto that word. And it was just it's slightly jarring to think, well, why that word they've accentuated? That might sound very picky, but that's what we're going to do at this level. You know, when you're sort of down the 60, 65, you get away with that because there's other things to pick up on. But here, we're looking for real artistry, and it's the little details that would just detract that little bit. And that's kind of what's happening here. But one final thing I will commend is the tenors did a beautiful job in that tag. So you got RBCing and then cuts off and just the tenors on their own. No overlap or anything. Very crisp, very clean, very well supported, beautiful quality, and it just really enhanced the emotion. And you know, overall, it was a joy to watch.
Thank you very much, Ed. Excellent comments. So hopefully you're getting a sense of how the different perspective of the different judges, how there are similar elements going on within them, that within the singing category there's a lot more relation to perhaps some of the technical aspects of how the voice is used. In the music category, very much making sure that the piece of music itself is actually celebrated, and within the performance category that the piece of music is actually brought forward as this piece of entertainment. So hopefully you've got a bit of an understanding out of that now. So now is the time for questions. So far, you've all been somewhat reserved, really. Maybe we've been explaining everything so perfectly well that you feel like you actually know everything. But perhaps you've just been waiting to kind of get your fingers near the keyboard and type those questions in. So the first question that we have today, which I'm going to hand over to Rhea in just a second to answer, is from Jim, and he's saying, I'm quite new to Barbershop and I don't fully understand when you're talking about the categories overlapping. Can you explain what that is? So Rhea, over to you.
Hi, thanks for your question, Jim. It's a historical thing. Barbershop's developed to this particular way that we're judging at the moment with only 3 categories. But when it actually changed from when it was 4 categories before that, there was a bit that we called common ground, going back into the early 90s, and that was brought over. And there were certain elements that we would all say, well, that's in the singing category, or that's in the music category, or that's in the, as it was in those days, presentation category. And we have the same language. I'm sure you'll have heard the same words coming out. We've talked about execution, we've talked about believability. All of those things will be on our forms. Ed's talking about consonants, and I said it's the same as that because it's about in-tune singing. and that helps us have expansion, which is also on the other form. So we're using the same language, which was originally the common ground area. And you heard so many things that are so similar. That's what we mean by the overlap. And we've all got different elements. I think I'm right in saying we've all 5 elements down the side on the sheet. And it's not a hierarchy. You don't go, right, there's that one done, there's the next one, there's the next one. It's like a filter, it's like a sieve, and the sound goes through it and it comes out the other end, and you just mark wherever. It could be up here, it could be down here, it could be here. You just write down what you actually hear. And that's how we have the category overlap. And it's right, because we're not saying this is my bit, I'm only going to do this, because everything affects everything else. You know, singing is fundamental to everything that they're doing. You've heard it coming from performance, saying these people need more help in singing so that they will help them express the music. You've heard the same thing from Ed, saying singing was a bit tense here. They still need some vocal technicians and some vocal techniques and skills to help them with their performances overall. So that's what we mean by the category overlap. All right. Hope that helps.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Ree. I'm not seeing any other questions coming through the chat at the moment. Jim, did that answer your question? If you still have anything follow up to that, by all means tap it into the chat at the moment. In the meantime, I've got a question which is perhaps on some of your lips out there. We have, between Barbershop in the UK, we have BABS, we have Labs as organisations, and we have Sweet Adelines as well. We've just been featuring BABS performances on this, but if I was to ask any of our judges, how would you feel about judging a contest for perhaps BABS through to Labs? Are there differences? Are there similarities? Helen, what would you say?
I think for my category in particular, no, there won't be any differences at all. We judge within the same system. We're still looking for the same things. You know, those 5 bullet points that we talked about early on in performance. We're still looking for female and mixed voice and male quartets to all be performing with beautiful expression, to have visual vocal agreement, to be entertaining and to give an impact to the audience. So all of the things in the performance category are going to be the same. The only caveat I would put with that is that, of course, if you then hopped over to Region 31 or any of the Sweet Adelines competitions, they of course have a different judging system from BABS and Labs, and BABS and Labs adopt theirs from the Barbershop Harmony Society. So you would then have some differences there. But in terms of the people who judge in BHS, it doesn't matter your voice type for me, as long as you can give me a really good story and performance.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. I can see another question coming through here live at the moment. And I'm not sure if my fellow judges can see the question in there at the moment, but Ed, do you want to maybe pick up on this one? To what
Sure. So Mark's question is, yes, to what extent do the judges think a choir's prior reputation might play a part in influencing their scores? So the honest answer is it shouldn't. We are trained to judge what's in front of us, not a preconception. We don't see, oh yes, this is Grand Central Chorus. We know they score at high A normally, so I'm going to start my pen about 78 and move up or down. It's not how it works. I will caveat it and say we are human, but we are trained. We have seminars normally outside of COVID, when we actually had to meet. We have seminars twice a year where we meet and we just look at recordings and we compare around the room scores. And the whole point of doing that and looking back at the scores that we've done at previous competitions is we're trying to get it so that we are judging exactly what we hear, not what we're expecting to hear. I think the closer we get to what we're expecting to hear is you might see a chorus come out and go, I can see they look confident. So I'm expecting that they might do well because the way they're standing, it's giving me a certain perception that this is going to be a good performance. But even that, you know, you still assess what you're going to, you know, what you actually hear. But there should actually be no impact from who is singing. It should be entirely what you hear, or in performance cases, what you hear and see.
Thank you very much, Ed. We are just about running out of time at the moment. So just remains for me to go through the thank yous. So thank you very much to everyone who has joined us in these sessions. I hope that they've been informative to you. I hope they've given you a greater understanding of what the judges are actually seeing, and how there is that overlap between each of the categories. And hopefully you've got a bit of an understanding about what was improving from one performance to another. We've scaled them that way on purpose this time, so that hopefully there was a little bit more clarity. You could get a sense of those things that were improving each time as we moved on to the next performance. So hopefully you've got a sense of that. It just remains for me to say thank you very, very much to Hannah for looking after us this afternoon, making sure that everybody was let into the room when they should be, and ensuring that all the wheels were moving in the right direction all the way through. I've had my fantastic colleagues here from the judging fraternity, to have Ed Cox from the music category, Helen from the performance category, and Rhiannon from the singing category. It's been fantastic working with them, and if you suddenly think afterwards of a question that you were dying to ask, if you make a quick screen grab of those email addresses up there, we're quite happy to take any questions afterwards if you want to have more knowledge. And of course there is the BABS website that you can look, singbarbershop.com, to find out any more information on the judging category, should you be tempted to come and join us at time. Thank you very much indeed, greatly appreciated, and stay safe everybody, and I'm sure we're all looking forward to the day when we eventually will get to sing together again. Thanks you very much.
Thanks to you, Mike. Thank you to you.
Yeah, thanks, Mike.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, judges. That was fantastic. Hope everyone enjoyed that. And yeah, we'll see you all again soon. Thank you.
Okay,
Bye.
bye.